Myles here at Tactical Hyve, joined by no other than Joe Farewell, who you've probably seen in our previous videos. And if you're unfamiliar with Joe, if it's your first time tuning in, Joe is a former SWAT team member as well as a 3-gun champion. So you're in for a treat whenever you're watching a video with Joe. He has a lot of great tips. And today in this video, we're going to discuss the transition from shooting with iron sights to
running a red dot.
Running a red dot, and it's happening. I mean, it's more and more common these days. So we want to share some tips with you so that you can make the transition easy. All right, welcome back. Before we get to the content, we want to thank Dry Fire Mag for sponsoring today's video. The Dry Fire Mag is great, especially if you're shooting a striker-fired gun like a SIG or a Glock. This allows you to manipulate your trigger without having to rack the slide every single shot. So all you need to do is you rack the slide once, insert the mag, and then you're off to the races. And this is great for working on your trigger manipulations, working that skill set, so you can hyper-focus rather than changing, always having to rack the slide. If you guys are interested in grabbing one, make sure to check the description below. Use the code TACHYVE for $10 off. And if you guys are serious about dry fire, you should check out Joe's Dry Fire Mastery course. Joe, do you want to tell them about it?
Yeah, guys, the Dry Fire Mastery course is a video series that I put together giving you specific drills along with structured training on everything from handgun fundamentals all the way through 3-gun competitions and everything you need to do to get good at dry firing.
So make sure to check it out, guys, down below.
All right, guys, so more and more people are diving into using red dots on pistols. And that's a really good thing because the technology's come so far that the red dots are consistent, they're reliable, and it does make it a lot easier to shoot. But people are coming over from the iron sights world, and there are some things to think about when you're trying to make that transition. What's the first thing that you think about when it's time to transition from iron sights to a red dot?
Me personally, well, let me backtrack a little bit because I have more experience, right? So I'm thinking, I'm gonna try to answer that from a complete beginner, and I'm trying to put my feet in their shoes. So I don't know if this is exactly gonna be true, but a lot of people will always ask, or always say they can't really find the dot. Right?
Yep.
So they're used to these iron sights, they're trying to present with a red dot and they can't find it. That's the first thing. One
of the things with iron sights that, with that presentation, is it gives you your reference point. So go ahead and pull that out. You can see, if you come up and your reference points are off, if your alignment is off, you can see what you need to do to correct it. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you're running a red dot and you bring this up, the dot may not be in the window. Yeah. And then you're kind of screwed. So what do you do to correct that? So one thing that I recommend people do is for first-time red dot shooters, maybe you don't even know your natural point of aim. If you guys aren't unfamiliar with that, we've created lots of videos about that. But let's just say that it's the first time you're picking up a red dot, you're always presenting, you can't find it at all. What I like to suggest people do is just start from reverse in the beginning, and then you can refine everything later. But you will look through your window, you see the red dot exactly where you want to. Then based on the technique you use, you're just gonna lock your wrists, bring your elbows in, and remember kind of the orientation of your wrist. You don't want to move it. And then if you present, that red dot technically should be where it started from. So reverse engineering it. That's how I like to start things off for people who are transitioning. Yeah, building that consistency with your presentation. We've talked about it before with natural point of aim. You want to make sure that you're in your shooting stance. And we've talked about shooting stance, we've talked about shoulder position, arm position, all those things. But when we get in that shooting stance, we want to go ahead and, like Myles was saying, build that dot picture that you want to have, that dot sitting in the middle of the screen, and then just bring it down. And then you can start adding some speed behind that to make sure as you bring it up, it is clearly in the middle of the screen every single time you present. And then to build a natural point of aim, we can build on that process as the reverse engineering and build on it with a full presentation from the draw to make sure that you're not having to make any adjustments. And that's, again, we don't dive too much into natural point of aim because Joe has actually done a video on that. We will leave it in the description below or up top here. And then we have a bunch of natural point of aim videos, so just watch that. But combining those two are going to help you really find the dot. And
to Joe's point, that is usually what I feel beginners always say at the very beginning. I can't find the dot. I can't find the dot.
You see a lot of this going on, like,
yeah.
Where? Oh, there! Nope. There it is. Now we got it. And that takes up a lot of time too. And everyone says like dots are supposed to be way faster, but it's taking me more time to take these shots. And there's a couple of things about that. And the first thing that we just talked about is making sure that the alignment with the eyeball and the orientation with the gun is consistent, and that dot comes to your eye every single time.
Yeah, and to that point, one thing that might be helpful is some people will also hunch their head at the same time they're bringing their gun up. So you have two moving parts trying to meet in the middle, and you'll notice when Joe, that's
bad.
Yeah, that's not very ideal. So Joe, if you could present the proper way. So see how Joe's head did not move at all. So he's literally bringing the sights up. So there's not an additional variable that you can miss, right? So if you're trying to meet both in the middle, you might miss the dot.
And that's part of just building a good draw stroke, and we do the same thing with iron sights or a red dot. We cover that in other videos. We cover it in the dry fire series. Like, there's a lot of content out there. We're not going to hammer that too much. But another thing that we see a lot is incorrect focal plane. Now, with the iron sights, we talk about that a lot. Where do you need to focus with iron sights?
So, okay, we're getting into a little weeds here, but for beginners, generally speaking, right, what you're always taught is focus on the front sight, front sight focus. And when you get more advanced, you could break that. You know, once you know the rules, you can break the rules. But with red dots,
we're looking at the target focus. We want to maintain target focus, and the red dot is beautiful for that because essentially the dot's going to come up and it's overlaying the target. So you don't have to look at the dot. You should be maintaining that target focus the entire time, and it's going to allow you to transition targets without having to transition focal planes regardless of the difficulty of the target.
I would say that I've noticed this, and I'm sure you have too. This is one of the hardest parts for people to do when transitioning because they've been so trained to look at iron sights. So when they present with a red dot, they actually take their focus from the target, they bring it back to the red dot when they don't need to at all. So that essentially slows them down.
It does, it slows you down. And the reason why it slows you down is not just because you're shifting your focal planes, but when you shift your focus to the red dot itself, what happens is you start to over aim. You start to analyze every little movement of that red dot, and you're looking for a perfect sight picture. And we're gonna run a drill here in a little bit that's gonna help you with that. But when you're looking for that perfect sight picture, if the red dot's there, you're gonna see movement, and it's not gonna get any more there when it's acceptable. So
we've already covered two really good tips to transition from iron sights to a red dot. And now I want to play off of something Joe just mentioned where, you know, it's all about, with a red dot, you should be faster. Yet some people are not faster. And it's because they haven't accepted the movement of the red dot here. And so I think that would be a great third tip to share with our viewers where it's, okay, so what are you supposed to actually see? How are you actually supposed to shoot with the red dot?
Now with iron sights, because you don't see the movement as much, we accept less. So the first time you pick up a red dot, a lot of times you realize like how much your body's moving. It looks like you're just shaking all over, like you got a freaking earthquake underneath you. And it comes to a point once you get comfortable with that, that you just accept that there is gonna be movement in the dot. Even though there's movement in the sights, in iron sights that you may not realize, you're gonna see the movement in the dot a lot more, and you have to accept that, hey, when it's there, I can take the shot. But it takes some practice, it takes some focus to get to that point.
There is a little bit of a learning curve. It doesn't have to be a lot.
Yeah.
But it's because of the way we're traditionally taught with iron sights. That's why there's that hurdle. But once you get the hang of it, it's just really fast and you can be very, very accurate with it.
So a simple drill that you can start doing now that will help you with that process of accepting that wobble, accepting the movement in the dot, and build on our natural point of aim in our presentation is working with just one shot at a time, but we're gonna start with the gun off target, okay? Let's go ahead and run this drill real quick.
Cool.
All right guys, so the process for this drill is we're just gonna start with this gun kind of at that point where we reverse engineered it from here. And my goal is as soon as it gets into the acceptable target area, which is in this case an A zone, I'm going to break that shot. I don't want to wait for the dot to settle or for it to get perfect. I'm just going to start here, bring it up, and start pressing that trigger the moment that I have acceptability. So we're going to start here. Okay, And we've got 3 perfect hits in the middle of the target. Now they're not stacked on top of each other, but they're in the acceptable sight picture, the acceptable target area. I'm not waiting for that dot to stop moving. Okay. Another variation to this is you can start working from side to side. So I can start pointing the gun off to one side, look at the target, drive it in, and immediately take the shot the moment that I have acceptability. And that's also going to help you with your information processing. Okay. Once you have that one round at a time, you can add some volume behind it to where maybe I start here. We build that reverse engineering process, again, that natural point of aim building skill, or that skill building process, and we add a couple of shots to it. And what that's going to allow you to do is also check your recoil control, check your stance, and all of those aspects that we need to be aware of in shooting to make sure everything is confirmed and working together while we're presenting that dot and getting those accurate shots.
Playing off what Joe just already illustrated, just to emphasize, remember, we're not waiting for that dot to settle. It's that streak that we're looking for, right? It's not necessarily a steady dot. Of course, if it's maybe further out, then you maybe need to be more precise. But I would say for practical shooting distances, you're most likely never ever going to have to wait for it to settle.
Well, let's look at the difference real quick between just an A-zone hit and what I need to see for a headshot. So if I'm gonna go for an A-zone hit, all I need to see is that flash of red in the middle of the A-zone, right? Yep. And we're getting our hits there. But if I need to go to a headshot, I need to let it refine a little bit more, make any little corrections that I need to make sure we get those headshots. Those are pretty good though.
Yep.
I'll take that any day of the week. So I hope that helps you guys. I hope that gives you a couple of things to think about as far as what you need to do to transition over from iron sights to a red dot. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them down below. Make sure you're following along because Myles is always putting out awesome content. I like to jump on here when I can, and we'll see you on the next one.
Yeah, see you guys.